Bam! MC is in the house. What's up, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I'm here every Wednesday at Eastern Standard Time at noon, taking a topic, deep diving, having a good time while doing it. And I got a good bunch of content planned for today. A topic that I've been running into often, repetitively, I could even say, as of late. And it's really linked into the meta model, my pressure to power meta model, and what I'm always trying to sort of convey to the guys that I work with, the guys, you guys out there that are watching my stuff. Before I get into all that housekeeping, let me be responsible. masterchimletter.com. That is my email list. I send it out every morning. It's free. Sign up. I guarantee you will get something out of it. I've been doing it for, I think I've started my list, my newsletter, email newsletter, maybe 10 years ago. It's all a blur. Around 10 years ago, a lot of emails, right? A lot of emails. And of course, I can get a little bit more transparent and sometimes aggressive, authentic on the emails, more than I can on these platforms, which everyone's got to play by the rules. You guys should know that by now. So, what do we got going on? Jamie, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. Aaron, what are you writing here? We already started, Aaron. You already have me reading? All right. I thought of this the other day, and you probably said something similar, or maybe even got it from you without remembering. I'm past the point of caring if someone gets offended that I call them a retard. I'm offended that they're retarded. Greetings, by the way. I can't take credit for that, but I can't say I disagree with it either. So, right on. Cat, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. So, mood is what we're talking about, and mood is really the more copyright friendly term than what I use more often, which is state, right? And mood is something that everybody could sort of relate to. I talk about not being in a bad mood. One of my phrases is, I always sound like a fucking idiot when I talk like that. One of my sayings, like literally everything I'm saying is a saying, right, of mine. But you guys know what I mean. Like, cut me some slack if you're rolling your eyes yet. But I'm rolling my eyes at myself for what it's worth. That being said, first tangent out of the way, is there's never a reason to be in a bad mood. Only the weak mind adds suffering to circumstance. And some people will say, well, you just don't understand, or you just, and because they're so fragile, right? These individuals that push back against those statements, like I shared, they interpret everything as an existential threat. If something's not standing on a sturdy foundation, even a windy day, even a cool summer breeze can be the undoing of an individual. So we want to make sure that when we are engaging with people, and I've had to learn this the hard way, the easy way, certainly I put my reps in. When we're dealing with people, we have to take into consideration the context of just how fragile they are, or how impactful or pressurizing some of the things you say to them is landing as you're saying it. It took me a while to learn that, or at least develop a functional relationship with that dynamic. But what it comes down to is some people are too soft to have hard conversations. Now, when I'm talking about state, or I'll continue to use mood to keep things, continuous in today's talk, we have to understand that our mood is completely disconnected from our circumstances. If you're somebody who it's raining outside, and it happens to be raining outside where I'm at here in Pennsylvania, some people will say, what a shitty day. And it's like, okay, it's a shitty day. What is the criteria for a shitty day? Is it that the weather is not the weather you want? Because if we just had a 6-month drought, I don't even know if those things exist, but a 6-month drought and it rains, wouldn't we be happy? Wouldn't it be a wonderful day? So the fact that it's just raining and it's making it shitty, are we referring to its inconvenience, you know, and how it's affecting us and our ability to navigate our day? Like everything's wet, there's mud, we're tracking through your house. Like what is the criteria? Because we start using these terms, we create these stories. Next thing you know, how we feel is being dictated completely by external circumstances that we have no control over. You don't want to be the guy that cries when it rains. You guys have heard me say that before. So what is it that, when we're looking at the vulnerability of having our mood being dictated, by external circumstances, or better yet, what is the consequence we expose ourselves to by allowing ourselves to be tyrannized by our mood? A lot of times it's a list of just obvious things. It's a list of things that we've never really attributed to just being, having our mood affect us or control us to some extent. But it's really, not a complicated thing to internalize. Like a lot of things in life, sometimes the most powerful things are the simplest. And there's a relationship between that sort of simplicity and power, whereby the stronger you are, the simpler you could move, the easier it is. If you're a billionaire and you want to get something to eat, you just tell somebody to get you something to eat, I guess. I guess that's what billionaires do, right? I went right to billionaire. But the idea is there are things that, because of your power, your strength, you've never had to develop a process for, right? The only time like I've heard, I'll use a business application of this, and I'm not sure who to accredit this to. I want to say, no, I'm just going to be making something up. It's one of the, the Mount Rushmore business guru guys who said the only reason we sell is because our offer isn't good enough, right? Meaning, if I was the guy who, and I use this example in my mastermind group, if I'm the guy in the middle of the desert and there's no water to be found, and I have water, I could get whatever I want for it. Basically, the only signage I need is water, right? Let them know this is what I have. But aside from that, there is no selling. There is no persuasion. Guy comes up to me in the middle of the desert. I'm the only guy with water and asks, why should I buy your water? I can look at him and go, you can do whatever the fuck you want. If I wanted to be a little more helpful, I could say, because you're probably going to die from thirst if you don't. In terms of price, I'm the only guy. How much does your water cost? What do you have? I have the ability to do that because my offer is so valuable. I don't have to sell. So sometimes when we're looking at the relationship we have with things, if we're trying to negotiate, if we're trying to persuade, if we're trying to manipulate, understand the inherent weakness involved in that type of situation. I want to ask my boss for a raise. How should I ask him? My answer, whenever somebody's ever posed that question to me, it's always been, well, does he speak English? Yes. Then lead with English. Because my position is not that you should have to persuade your boss to see your value. If anything, you should remind him of your value. I mean, listen, you're speaking to a guy who's an entrepreneur and he's gotten fired from every job he's ever had. So take my how to be a good employee advice with a grain of salt, by all means. But when the structure is strong enough, you don't need all this extra stuff. Having a good mood, a good state, allows you to be better at whatever it is that you do. Sometimes people paradoxically will say, well, when I'm in when bad things are going on, I'm in a bad mood, and that's reasonable. It's not reasonable. Okay, I would push back. It's not reasonable. It's untrained. It's expected, I could say. It's weak. It's undeveloped. It's natural, I might even say. But you can't say it's reasonable, because it's not reasonable, because I would counter that the exact opposite is true. In the worst situations, you want to be at your best. Why isn't that the common thing? Why isn't that the intuitive response to stress? Well, with trained people, that's exactly what it is. But again, they've trained themselves to do that, right? A trained response instead of the natural one or the untrained response. So I have a list as usual. Before I get into this, what do we got? Aaron writes, kind of reminds me of a quote I saw somewhere the other day. Once you decide that you want to have a good life, life will start getting good. That's right. I forget who the quote's attributed to, where it's like whether you say you can or you can't, you're right. But a lot of this old wisdom gets this, and it's usually and the irony is people will agree with the quote when it's distilled and all its context is removed and they're looking at it as a quote on a billboard or a screen. They'll go, yeah, absolutely. But as soon as they look to apply that, that's where, sometimes it's harder for people to follow. Jamie writes, wherever you go, there you find yourself. Absolutely. Cap says, my job anniversary is coming up. I expect a merit increase. Right. Well, that's the thing. It's like, listen, if you're valuable, then show it. If, I once had an employee who wasn't a bad guy, I'm sure he's good for something, just not as an employee. And he had asked me for a raise. And I was truly dumbfounded when he asked for a raise. And I didn't understand the context. Like, what do you mean a raise? I understood what he was saying. I understood the language, but it sort of threw me for a loop. And I remember my reply being something to the effect, it might not have been verbatim, but it was like what? Why should you get a raise? And his reply was, because I've been here 2 years and never got one. So it's like my immediate reaction was, so you want me to give you more money for not getting fired? Because I didn't understand. I didn't understand what he was saying. I've never been in a situation where I had to ask for a raise because I'd been there a long time. Now, again, as I alluded to earlier, I got fired from every job I've ever had. But there's a point where, like, he wasn't arguing, well, if you calculate for inflation, or like he wasn't arguing the inflation angle, right? The living wage / inflation position. That wasn't it. It was just an expectation in the form of an entitlement to get more money because he's been here long enough. And my reply to him was no. Right? So, but just to add to that, it wasn't just no, like I'm not some cheap fuck. It's just that I refuse to incentivize laziness. I incentivize ambition, initiative, creativity, ingenuity. Anybody that works for me knows there's a lot of ways you can make money with me. If you do this, you can get that. If you get this, you get that. If you bring value to the house, you get a cut of the value you bring. But being a part of the house might enable you to acquire that value. It's win-win. It's always win-win. But as an employer, like I believe in paying well. But paying well is always in reference to the output of the individual I'm paying. So my guys make different amounts of money from week to week. It depends on what happened. It's you eat what you hunt. That's the way that works. Right? So anyway, sidetracking. This is supposed to be about mood and state and stuff like that. I do have a list, of course. And the reason that is because I always venture off into different topics, as you just witnessed if you're watching. Right? So let me get into this list. I went and I put this on my streaming software here. And I have a list of why most men are still negotiating with themselves and why, as a result, mood can be a tyrant, right? So I got 10 things. Let's hit them. All right, so number 10, the opposite of mood isn't motivation. The opposite of mood is not motivation. The antidote to a mood driven living is structure. And that structure should enforce action regardless of emotional state. When somebody is, in need of being in a good mood in order to be productive, to them, they're never really addressing the root cause. A lot of times, these individuals, they wind up putting themselves in situations where they're on a never-ending hunt for motivation. They wake up and they're like, if I can't get excited about doing what I'm supposed to do today, I'm not going to do it. And then at the end of the day, the reason for them not having done it is because they just couldn't get around to finding any motivation to do it. That is not a functional protocol, not a functional process. So I'm somebody who believes in structure. What is the structure that I'm always talking about? It is the systems, the processes, the tools, the schedules, any arrangement you make to be able to facilitate your outcomes being that much more efficient, to make you that much more productive, goes under the guise of structure. If you don't have any structure, you're going to rely purely on your willpower. Now, your will and the power of your will is something that absolutely burns on motivation. It burns on the fire that an individual has for creating a given outcome. But should that fire wane, if the outcomes to still be pursued, it has to be then reliant on structure. I'm somebody who has designed his entire life around structure because I'm a crazy person for the most part. I'm a fucking wild animal. My energy is all over the place. My focus is all over the place. And I need to constrain the movement that I'm constantly making to some sort of linear type application. What do I mean? If I wake up and have absolutely nobody relying on me, no deadlines to make, like my email that I write every day, if I don't have that to do, like I can't even imagine what I would wind up doing. Like it would be a lot of fun. The adventure would be epic. I might have some great stories to tell after it, but I don't know if I'd ever build anything worth a shit because I need to focus my energy. And one of the ways to do that is to build a structure that allows for momentum when will dissipates, which it inevitably will, right? No pun intended. So, number 10, the opposite of mood isn't motivation. All right. JRF says discipline beats mood or motivation 10 out of 10 times. I agree completely. There are times where motivation is something that will add a spark where a spark is needed. But you can't, cook a steak on sparks, right? At some point, you need the fire. I'm going to venture off a mission with that analogy if I keep running it. So let's get to the next one. I already lost my list. All right, here we go. So number 9, mood-based living feels free at first. When you're living by the state or the mood you're in, you feel independent, you feel autonomous early on, but eventually, inevitably, it leads to chaos. It leads to varying degrees depending on the individual and timeline. It leads to anxiety. It leads to a lack of certainty. It's very hard to find your bearing in life if everything looks different from beat to beat and there's no pattern to be observed. It's disorienting. And that sabotages people's momentum. So, what is one of the reasons that people sort of succumb to this emotional, mood-driven type of life? It's because in the beginning it feels liberating, it feels free, and I think that most of us, and I would say probably everything on this list, if you've been around the block, I'm 51 years old. Everybody here is, I'm sure, around different ages, but you've experienced anything in life, a lot of these things you'll be able to go, yep, I remember that happening, right? And I think this is certainly one of them. Let's get to number 8. Pressure exposes who's in charge. Pressure exposes who's in charge. Whenever we're stressed, right? And in my meta model, I talk about friction. And friction in the form of pressure as a type of pressure is something that tests the system. If I want to see if somebody's strong and I put on 200 pounds on the bar, that 200 pounds is put to assess their strength, to test their strength. Similarly, the friction that we engage reveals what your habits, your structure, your systems, everything is built on. If you can't have a structure to rely on, that pressure will immediately attack your will. It'll attack your energy. If you're somebody who lives driving himself completely by mood, you're great in great situations during great times, you're terrible in terrible situations during terrible times. If you're somebody that does that, pressure is always going to reveal that. One of the I'm putting up a video later on my channel here that I had one of my sons make, right? Homeschooling. I have him doing this project, and it's AI, distilling a bunch of stuff that I've written and spoken about into this one thing. And it's I think it's great, a little biased. It's my son that made it, but an excerpt in the script, which is from one of my talks, it talks about when you're somebody who constantly runs on feelings, you're never going to be the person who is designing your path. Because rather than am I getting warmer or colder based on a target, it's really, is this more comfortable or less comfortable? And it's a much different type of way to orient yourself from moment to moment, from day to day, right? So hopefully that makes sense. So number 7, pressure exposes who's in charge. That was number 8. Let's get to number 7. Number 7, mood thrives when you have no structure. When you have no fixed standards, no sort of minimum viable, outputs, responsibilities, etc. Your mood, your state will fill that space with stories and excuses. You can go down in any city and go to the hood, wherever the hood is in that city, and you will find people that objectively are low performers. I'm not saying all of them. Don't fucking get your panties in a bunch. But you will find people there who are low performers who are also having the time of their life. These people are, talk about living in the moment, because all there is the moment. There is nothing to connect themselves to that transcends the moment they're in. And, if they got $10, they'll spend 11, those types of people. And one of the things you could say is when there's no structure, you are free to do whatever you want. And if you're free to do whatever you want, why wouldn't you do the thing that makes you feel good? And that's one of the things you'll observe with people who have no structure. So it's like, how do you incentivize not having a structure? You remove the structure from an individual and let him just do whatever feels good. It's sort of like letting a teenager eat whatever they want. And you're like, oh, what's the big deal? The kid's happy, everything's great. Come back 10 years later, the teenager's 600 fucking pounds, and they got him on a TV show with that little fucking ethnic doctor that's always making fun of them. What is it? My 600-pound life, that show. Because at some point, this person was allowed to eat. And he's allowed to eat what he wanted to eat, what tasted good as much as he wanted, with absolutely no context. And because there was no structure to protect him from himself, he winds up suffering the consequences, right? So, number 7, mood thrives when you have no structure. So, number 6, you can be responsible and still be weak. You could be responsible and still be weak. In the modern times, I would say that a lot of people fuck this up. They talk about their credit score or their, how much they have in their bank account or their 401k or their model of car. And it's like, aren't you the fucking fanciest cunt in the land? When it actually comes down to it, if you can't make shit happen, your utility is capped, right? You can handle, especially in a modern sense, external obligations of the aquarium while still simultaneously breaking promises to yourself and your standards on a daily basis. What do I mean by that? People will embrace rules in order to avoid the weight of creativity and accountability, productivity. I'm married. I have 4 kids. I have to make sure there's food in the refrigerator. If there is no food in the refrigerator, there is no story that's going to negate the consequences of there not being food in the refrigerator. In other words, I have a reality-based standard that I must meet. You will have people, and again, I said disproportionately, you'll see this in the aquariums of modern, cities and just society in general, because everybody's detached from the natural life that we once used to lead. You'll see people who will check all the boxes, they'll follow all the rules, and they'll even get some of those benefits, in the form of resources that the aquarium has available for people who comply. And they can do all of that without ever addressing the fact that they're still weak as baby shit. The scenario of, okay, you take this guy, drop him in the middle of the woods. How does he fare? Is he okay at night in the woods? Has he ever seen an actual nighttime without, the ambient residual lights of a city? Can he fall asleep with all these strange sounds? Does he think every animal in the woods is going to eat him as soon as he falls? Like, what level of clarity does he have when looking at the strength of who he is as a man? Sometimes, the aquariums of modern society, they will reward people for compliance. And these people will tell themselves that those rewards come because of their power or their inherent value. It's like, no, you follow the rules. Here's your treat. It's not to say that I'm against making money, obviously. I charge a lot of money for the shit I do, so don't get it twisted. The point is, one is never to be sacrificed for the other. So I want to be responsible. I want to be reliable. I want to be productive. I want to be all these different things. But at no point am I ever allowed to be weak. Doesn't mean that I don't have my weaknesses. I'm on the road like everybody else. But at no point is that acceptable. I have so much money, I don't have to be a man. I have so many resources, I don't have to be able to find new ones, or I don't have to be able to deal with violence, or I don't have to be a protector to my family. Like, there's a certain point where what's truly important to an individual will be revealed in how he spends his days. All right, so number 6, you can be responsible and absolutely still be weak. Let's get to number 5. Number 5, mood thinks short term. Mood thinks short term. Mood optimizes. It's incentivized by an immediate comfort, an immediate reward. Structure, by contrast, builds long-term power. Structure builds the long game. I was listening to an Alex Hormozy video the other day, and he was talking about Elon Musk. And he had this great insight on Musk, and he talked about the timeline that somebody has to make their sort of dreams come true. I'll use that blanket phrase. And Hormozy was making the observation where he has like 3 to 5 years tops. And beyond that, he's like, I can't even think that far. I don't know who I'm going to be. And I could resonate with that. But he says Elon Musk was talking about electric cars and rockets like 20 years ago. before he had become Elon Musk that we know on the world stage. Because way back then, I think in an interview he said he started wanting to go to Mars and visit outer space when he was 7. You know, that starts informing your decisions, and you give yourself enough time, you will start to manifest that reality. And I don't mean any manifest like, light a fucking candle and speak to the trees or anything, like I'm talking about just a causal relationship we have with our decisions and the movement based on those decisions when they align with who we are, right? So, number 5, mood thinks short term, which again is not a good thing. Let's get to some comments here. All right. JRF says, so true. The general growth of an individual in a modern age is being conducted in the individual's spare time. That's right. That's right. Dímelo, Plátano. It's my man Juan, one of my killers. What's up, homeboy? JRF writes, which can be limited, hence the requirement of discipline. Training is the way. Fucking A, it is. All right, let's get into the next one. So we are up to number 4. Number 4, mood makes you inconsistent. I don't think this is too complicated a concept or statement. Mood, how can I describe it? I just said it's easy to understand. Here I am fucking stuck for a sec. When your behavior is inconsistent, it's going up and down with your emotions. I've made this observation before. Your identity never has the opportunity to stabilize. What are the implications of that? The alliances you have with people. Who are they aligned with or allied with? Is it you in a good mood or you in a bad mood? It's like if you had some sort of, personality thing, right? This dissociative disorder, like multiple personality disorder. And you're Harry on Monday and Billy on Tuesday. And you make a bunch of friends as Harry on Monday and you run into them on Tuesday. And you're acting like somebody completely different. Are they still your allies? Extreme example, to just illustrate the point. But the idea of it is every single time you present yourself as a different version of yourself, you make a little more shallow all of the investments that are made in you in the form of alliance by others. It's like a little bit of anomalous behavior will have the tendency to have your allies pull back a little bit. Oh, all right. You ever meet somebody and you just fucking sync with them? Like, this guy's the best, great guy. We have so much in common, hanging out. Yeah, we're going to go shooting later. We're going to go play ball later. We're going to go lift later. This guy's, it's like, did we just become best friends? Like one of those situations. And then you spend enough time and something offset's revealed. And you're like, oh, okay. All right. So that's not going to be something we do. Or like at some point, like you guys are hanging out, you're at the gym lifting, and he's like, ever since I became a vegan, and you're like, what? What the fuck you mean you're a vegan? I thought you were a straight guy with a wife. Just play it. But the idea is every single time we're emotional, we present different versions of ourselves to the people who are trying their hardest. If they see value in who we are and the alliance they have with us, we're presenting a different version of ourselves. We're literally trying to convince them not to overinvest in us because we're unpredictable, we're unreliable, right? When I talk about the concept of respect, you look at the makeup of the word, re-inspect, like over and over again, spect being able to see, like when somebody is respectable, it means that who they present themselves as consistently. And when somebody presents themselves consistently over time, they are easy to respect, right? And it's modern society that conflates respect with liking somebody. There are a lot of guys that are super charismatic and likable that will fucking steal the rug from under your feet. All right. So, number 4, mood makes you inconsistent. Number 3, mood loves comfort. Mood loves comfort. So, this isn't like, if you've been following me for any length of time, you understand my very tumultuous relationship with comfort. I have way too much comfort in my life. I judge that, or I measure that by the amount of progress and drive and consistent output that I observe myself doing from day to day. I should be doing more, and one of the reasons I'm not is certainly because of these comforts that I experience. Mood is always going to make you feel comfortable, and I've shared this analogy before, right? Or this framework to illustrate this point. If you're an individual that is capable of 10 units of work, every day you could do 10 units of work, and you are introduced to a machine that does 5 units of work. So every day you do 10 units of work, turns out this machine can do 5 units of work. There are some people who the next day will make 15 units of work. They will continue to do their 10. They will add the 5. They'll put out 15 units of work. But at the other end of the spectrum, there are people who for the time being will still produce 10 from the machine, now only 5 from them. But eventually that 5 will dissipate and they'll wind up doing what the machine tells them to do, or what the machine's capable of doing. And they would have gone from 10 to 5, even though they got this tool that was supposed to, or at least capable of bringing them to 15. An application of that concept is the smartphone. We thought the smartphone was going to make us smart. We didn't know the smartphone was the thing that extracted our intelligence and made us less capable. That's what comfort does to an individual. When you're somebody who lives by the direction of their mood, and you are making emotional decisions based on your state, you will always gravitate towards comfort. It's just the way it is. So number 3, mood loves comfort. Let's go to 2. Mood starts the negotiation. All right. I like the concept, the term negotiation, when talking about a man's conversation with himself and how he allows his standards to erode over time. When you're somebody who's emotional, when you're somebody who's running his days, by what his mood or his state is telling him, you start opening the door to that internal bargaining process. And that process will slowly erode the belief, the reliability, the authority you have over your own word. Somebody who negotiates with himself is somebody who says he's going to do something, and then he's exposed to some sort of friction, and then says, hey, you know what? Maybe that's not the thing that I want. And this thing in and of itself did not change its value. It's just that his perspective changed, because once he engaged the motivation, or the friction to pursue it, he said, you know what? It might not be worth it. Juice might not be worth the squeeze. And it's like, okay, it was a good idea right up until you realized you would have to overcome some friction. Well, that's a negotiation. That's what that is. And I think somebody should sort of lower his sights, his targets, his standards even, until he gets to a level where he does not negotiate, and then build from there. It's one of the things that I talk about with the guys that I coach. It's like, yeah, it's great to say I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to own all these different things. I'm like, whatever the fucking, the dream statements are. It's fine to have those dream statements, but if you are making promises behind those statements, and those promises are now on the calendar in the forms of deadlines, Now you're just looking like you're full of shit. All right, I'm a big fan of Watts's telling of the Chinese farmer story, and I'm certainly not going to say it myself because this accent's not going to do well with that kind of story compared to fucking Alan Watts. So you can go Google that on your own. But the main character of the story, the Chinese farmer, he's somebody who has a, I wouldn't say a submissive or passive relationship with life, which I think a lot of people attribute to him. My take on it is he has much more of an observational one and much more of a realistic one. He knows what he doesn't know. He doesn't try to control what he knows he can't control. And he has no sense of entitlement. That's a very strong position to be in. Because circumstances won't change your relationship with you. They won't stand in the way of you relating to you. And when you can keep circumstances out of the relationship you have with yourself, you're a strong-minded individual. Right? In Tribalnomics, in the meta model, I describe that as self-power. Obviously, real power, which is the external component to power, is something entirely different. You could be somebody who has elite self-power, but have absolutely nothing because you've never developed real power. And it's hard for strangers to respect people like that, but those are the monks. Those are the people who are obsessive over one little thing, and they're elite in their ability or their relationship to do this one thing, but collectively as a society, we might not value it. It's like, who's the best, at meditating? Who's the best at like doing these just esoteric, unique things? It might not mean anything to us, but to that individual, he does that better than anything we do that we like doing. Right? So when we run our lives based on the mood we're in, the first thing that happens when friction shows up is we start negotiating our standards. Right? And my advice would be to lower your standards until you could find something that you could actually live by and then build from there. Right? It's almost like building a fancy house on a poor foundation. You got to tear that house down and start over again. Right? It's going to be worth it in the long run, and we should be playing the long game to begin with. Right? So number 2, mood starts the negotiation. And finally, and this is one of the things that I touched on indirectly in the other ones, but just to sort of put a cap on it. Number 1, if your mood decides, you're not in charge. If your mood decides, you are not in charge. If you only act when you feel like it, then your feelings outrank your standards, and you're not in charge of yourself. I remember hearing Dan Kennedy, business guru, talk about the concept of writer's block. And he's saying, he's always asked, because he's a prolific writer, he has all these books and stuff, and I own, I think, probably all of them. Big fan. He was saying, I don't experience writer's block, or he might have even said it in a way, I don't believe in writer's block. And this is my language, not his, but describing how he handled it. His thing was he doesn't believe in writer's block. He knows that there exist writers who are untrained and undisciplined. I write every day. I write my email, I'm writing notes, I'm writing articles, I'm writing a bunch of stuff. Every day I write. I don't know what writer's block is because I've trained myself to write when I need to write. And I've done that by creating a structure that requires me to do that thing. And over time, it just becomes the thing that I'm in charge of, not any emotional, snapshot of what's going on at the moment. I was going to write my article, but, I've been so stressed out over, like, I'm the guy that it's like, well, what the fuck does one thing have to do with the other? I get called cold a lot. And is that true? Let me a lot. I get called cold more than the average person. I'll say that one. I don't think everybody calls me cold because I think everybody thinks that left, right? So the guys that are around, I'm functional. But I have, I would say, unemotional uh, positions and responses to certain things. And sometimes there are people who want compassion and empathy where I think a process should be, It's like I don't feel like training today. It's like, okay, let's train. Like, okay, thanks for sharing. Because it's irrelevant to whether or not you should be training. I'm just not in the mood today. Okay. Oh, I've told people before, just do me a favor, write it down on a piece of paper and put it over there. I'll read it later, right? Because it just doesn't matter. And we have to decide. This is a standards thing. But again, I guess not only a standards thing, it's regarding the very topic of today's talk, which is, are you somebody that makes decisions and leads your life depending on the mood you're in? Years ago, when I first started the Pressure Project podcast with White Boy Pat, I would say emotion is the spice of life. And the thought process behind it is we never want to discard with emotion. We never want to discard with, feeling the depths of an emotional attachment and experience, because there's obviously value in that. It's obviously a naturally occurring thing that we humans do, but we don't want to put it where it doesn't belong. And that's where people make the mistake. They never trained themselves to be able to make that distinction. I've always been good in an emergency. Like shit hits the fan, like I get, tunnel vision. I'm ready to focus and go. I get into a very focused state. Some people lose their fucking minds. I think if you're somebody who gives yourself permission to run emotional formulas when you're stressed out, then that's what you're training yourself to do. I've trained fighters for a long time, and how you practice is how you're going to fight. The easiest example of this, I should probably get a more modern one, but the fighter back in the day, Tito Ortiz, he was a wrestler. He was a college wrestler. I don't know if he was a good wrestler. But like a lot of wrestlers turned fighters, he fell in love with throwing punches and, thought himself a striker at some point because it's sexier, right? We can put those hands up and you're pop, 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 yeah, it's entertaining. It feels good. Punch somebody in the face, especially when they don't hit your back. Wrestling doesn't always feel like that, doesn't always look like that, obviously. But Tito Ortiz, he would be a striker right up until he got popped, and then that motherfucker shoot a double 10 out of 10 times. Because that's what he wanted, was the striking. But the shot, that's who he was. You want to be somebody that trains yourself to respond with structure, not with emotion. Because if you're somebody who does the latter, it's your outcomes and eventually your life is going to be determined by something that is completely inconsistent and unreliable. Right? So, number one, if your mood decides, you're not in charge. So, what do we got here? Comments. Cap says, I've never had writer's block either. If anything, I have writer's diarrhea. Oh, that's great. That's great. Jared says, loyalty is an unbroken chain of deeds and services. Hashtag Pamana Tuhan Sayok. 100%. Right on. So, I don't know. Hopefully you guys are picking up what I'm putting down. I wanted to convey just the vulnerabilities of being an emotional person. I speak from experience. I am a recovering tyrant. When I was younger, I was a fucking maniac. And it's not that I'm no longer a maniac. I would say that I'm like a werewolf that can change when he wants to, not just when the moon is full, But I think anybody who has emotional formulas is going to wind up suffering the cost of those, because it's going to rear its head at the wrong time eventually. and you're going to be paying for it. And the thing is, right or wrong has nothing to do with it. It's just unnecessary. It's just unnecessary. If something costs $5 and somebody wants $10 for it, the argument for paying 10 instead of 5 is not, I don't care. Like an extra $5 doesn't mean anything to me. Assuming, of course, everything else is equal, right? You should always be looking to invest everything that you have, not waste it, right? As a general statement, as a general position in philosophy, we should be looking to invest energy, resources, not waste energy and resources. Because we never want to operate under the assumption that, or under the premise that there's an unlimited supply, because there isn't, right? So the opposite of that is showing gratitude. And when we have gratitude for our resources, gratitude for the things that bring value to our life, we tend to align our formulas and structures to appreciate them. Hope that makes sense. All right, there's a bunch of links in the description. I have a pressure process sprint coming up next month. If you're getting my emails, you will get announcements for that. There's a limited number of spots. It starts March 3rd. I'll be putting more details up during the week, but I won't be putting it here. So I'll be putting on the email list. So masterchimletter.com, go do that. The theme of this cohort of the sprint is all go, no show. Where is it? Yeah, it's here. All go, no show. Right. So that's the theme of this one, but more details on the emails. All right, folks, I appreciate you and the time you're spending with me. I know you guys are busy, and every time you're here, it's certainly something that I have gratitude for. I'll see you guys next week, same time, same bat channel, all that stuff. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.